Thank you very much, Secretary General. I have been instructed to delve directly into the matter by our chairman, so I'm going to do just that. We are going to look in this session at the investment priorities of government post-Erika. Now, I should preface this by telling you that, as indicated by the Prime Minister in his address to you, that in the budget address presented, there was a clear platform laid out to achieve economic growth of 5 to 7%, and he highlighted some of the areas of investment that were identified to achieve this. This is still current, though delayed. So we are focusing, however, on the priorities post-Erika. And the approach that we're taking is this: we're going to identify the failures as a direct impact of the storm, identify the critical interventions required to recover, build resilience and increase economic activities, and finally identify the critical areas requiring priority intervention. I should indicate to you that there may be a certain amount of repetition because you would have heard of some of those issues before, but what I hope will emerge is that there will be a greater definition of the tasks that government sees ahead. Let us look at some of the identified failures. In infrastructure, the most significant damages were to roads, pavements and edges, bridges and water crossings, culverts and drains, the Douglas Charles Airport, a disaster all by itself, and river defenses. And the photograph that you see on the slide is a section of the Iolibla Highway from the Layu River Bridge going west towards the village of Layu. And you can see the complete collapse of that section of the road along the river. Other identified failures relate to housing, where approximately 839 households were directly affected. And among those are completely lost houses, houses that sustain significant structural damage, those that sustain partial structural damage, and loss of access to houses because of voluntary evacuation. There are some areas where people just felt that they were unsafe and they decided to move. And this was especially so in Bath Estate, Dubique, and Petit Savan. In relation to livelihoods, which we heard something about, a number of businesses and individuals were also affected. In terms of farmers and fishers, farmers actually lost land. The land was lost. Access to the lands was in some cases impossible because of the condition of the access roads or feeder roads, quite apart from the access that was limited because of the condition of main roads. And fishers lost equipment, boats in some cases. In tourism, the tourism accommodation facilities were affected. In some areas where the tourism plant was built relatively close to a river, there were some failures of river defense walls, and etc. In the manufacturing sector, you saw in the area, for example, two very severely affected companies. Dominica Coconut Products and Shillingford Estates in Makushwi, where in case of Shillingford Estates, the entire sugarcane field was washed away, inundated with water. The distillation plant itself was severely silted. And of course, there are numerous small cottage industries that were affected. The loss of inventory and the loss of equipment in some cases. affecting the livelihoods of all those operators. And some of these areas of intervention, the major affected areas with infrastructural failures, and some of you who will go along the West Coast, you will see some of this afternoon, but they relate to Lambert, which is south of where we are right now, Lambert, Bagatelle, Point Michel, Soufriere, which is south of where we are, Bath Estate, just immediately east to where we are, as well as Watton Waven and Trafalgar, Layou Valley, the area of Pontcassé as well, which some of you would have passed through on your way from the airport to Dominica, then the West Coast, the Iwo-Libla Highway, as well as the Melville Hall to Canefield Road, that major road from Canefield to Melville Hall. And Melville Hall is where the Douglas Charles Airport is located. And right here in the Roseau area, the Roseau River to Copthall, the West Bridge, going right across the river, leaving Roseau, was also affected. Based on the work done by the Ministry of Public Works, some areas of interventions have been identified, and these relate to the replacement of damaged bridges, box culverts, waterways. In some areas, entire resurfacing of damaged road surfaces, the reinforcement of damaged bridges, the repairs to road edges, drains, and embankments, and you will see a lot of those of you going on the tour this afternoon, you will see a lot of these damages. And the area of the need for slope stabilization, which is in dire need in virtually all along the major highways in Dominica. A special challenge is going to be river dredging and defenses. Some work is already visible. Those river courses that traverse the main roads, you can see some through some of the villages, you can see some of the dredging that has commenced. But this is just the tip of the iceberg, because along many of those rivers, the true damage and the existing vulnerability and threats continue to exist way upstream. So to do a comprehensive work with respect to dredging, it will be required to go way upstream, and that is where the input of the hydrologists and the hydraulic engineers are going to be critical if we are to do this and truly reduce vulnerability due to the rivers. There's some special situations that exist that continue to be a challenge as well. I mentioned the dredging and training of rivers. There's a special area in the east called the Botica Gorge and Bridge and the Botica Gorge. This area historically has been a challenge to engineering in Dominica. In the late 60s, in trying to bridge that gorge, some lives were lost because of the difficulty of the terrain. Today, it continues to be a challenge. It is one of the areas that was washed away by Erika. And government is really wrestling with the engineering options that are available to make this a secure area. And we are told that it's going to require the inputs of some geotechnical work, serious geotechnical work, to inform any design that is going to take place there to truly have a sustainable and bridge. The area of slope stabilization, that is critical. I mean, the area of Petit Savan, for example, I mean, if this area is to be ever resettled, we believe that some substantial amount of slope stabilization is going to be required. And of course, the whole issue of road diversions requires special consideration, as well as the ongoing challenge of resettlements, which was mentioned earlier. The Douglas Charles Airport is all by itself is quite a sizable package, to deal with. And repair works for protection of the airport to allow it to return to full commercial activity are critical. Necessary is repairs to the apron, to the fencing, restoration of the runway shoulders, repairs to the access road and retaining walls, installation of solar lights to facilitate night landing, and dredging of the river and reinforcement of the river defense. I know that the management of the airport continues today to be nervous anytime there is, continued rainfall in Dominica because of the vulnerability that continues to exist to this day. Though those who visited Dominica soon after the Erika are amazed at the work that has been done to restore the airport to normal use. What then are the required support? First of all, the interventions are required for agriculture and fisheries. Among the programs indicated by the Prime Minister in his address to you to turn around the economy and achieve this economic growth of 5 to 7%, the agriculture sector features prominently. And the World Bank report has elucidated the extent of the impact of Erika on that sector. The light manufacturing, which really employs a sizable number of people, they too have been adversely affected, as well as the restaurants and small retail outlets who suffered really significant loss in some areas of their inventory. Health and wellness services are critical, and in the report we heard from on the social sector spoke to the need for ongoing psychosocial inputs as we resettle people in various communities, so that's going to continue to be critical, as well as the loss of the replacement of critical infrastructure conducive to sustained good health. And of course, the tourism accommodation and facilities. Government has reached out to a number of the hotel owners and owners of other tourism facilities in an effort to find out what forms any possible support could take to restore their operations to full commercial activity. The small business sector is a sector that, government has always deemed critical, and there are a number of initiatives that have been put in place to assist the development of that sector since it employs so many people. And this sector has not been lost out of government's consideration as a result of the impact of Erika. And this sector cuts across the purchase of agricultural and fisheries supplies and equipment to restore livelihoods. And government is about to establish concessionary financing through the Agricultural and Investment Development Banks through numerous financing mechanisms through the Agricultural Investment Unit, for example, to put back the small business sector and the agricultural sector on its feet. Government has been active since Erika, and a number of interventions have already taken place, some of which were mentioned again by the Prime Minister in his address. A number of farm access roads, have been cleared. A number of bridges along the West Coast, in Makushwi, in Point Rong, and Makushwi, Bailey bridges have been put in. The Baltica Gorge, a zip line has been erected so goods can be moved across, while there's a pedestrian walkway that has been, cut through the mountainside so people can actually walk but not drive. Secondary roads in Jurodel, again feeder roads, these have been cleared, as well as roads in Point Michel, Soufriere. All obstacles along the northern part of the Eo-Libla Highway, the Portsmouth to Marigot section of the northern highway that has been cleared, as well as the Hatton Garden to Castle Bruce and Bois d'Arbre to Port-Cassé roads. The central network, which is along the Nicholas-Liverpool Highway, interior, that too, all obstacles have been cleared, but there is still substantial work to be done along that highway in respect to edge failures, and in certain areas, actual collapse of sections of the road. Now, before Erika, there were certain, technical deficits existing within the entire government system, within the country, I should say, not just the government system. And in order to build back better, it is going to be very, very important that technical assistance inputs flow into Dominica. First of all, to undertake preparatory work. Dr. Jules just indicated a while ago that a number of plans and studies are still in progress. If we have to build back better, it means we have to design better, we have to construct better, see to what extent we can adopt modern construction technologies. We need assistance to support the implementation of works. Project implementation continues to be a challenge, not only in Dominica, but I know in a number of the OECS countries. The whole regime of land use and physical planning initiatives and laws would probably need review if we have to build climate resilient communities and make Dominica generally reduce vulnerabilities and make Dominica more climate resilient. We need to look at our whole framework of legislation on which those things sit. There's also need, of course, to improve the regulatory framework so that we can be more proactive with respect to climate change, adaptation, and mitigation. And finally, housing. This is the tremendous challenge. You know that the entire village of the community of Petit-Savan, as well as Dubic, in an earlier presentation, that the members of those communities have to be rehoused. There's an area called Paradise Valley along the Roseau River where homes have been severely undermined. Those of you again who go on the field trip this afternoon, you will see the effects in Coliho and Kulibistri, the vulnerabilities that continue to exist and will exist for a long time, and general assistance in other affected communities, not highlighted in this presentation, but which have been severely impacted and where livelihoods and the housing situation continue to be threats. There is still need to complete the structural assessments of damaged houses, to undertake the infrastructural works for new settlements, to facilitate relocation, transition, all those things that go with relocating people, and to finance home construction. While the World Bank has some indicative numbers in their rapid impact assessment, we cannot say that those numbers speak to the issue of building back better or doing things better, doing everything better, not just building back physical structures better, but in terms of administration, in terms of management. Doing it better has to cut through every single thing we do, not just the infrastructure, the physical infrastructure. This is the challenge we face, and I thank you for being here to respond to this.